Well, ladies and gentlemen, we say the best for last. We have today with us a world-famous hacker, a cybersecurity expert, author, and a former US Marine for the international keynote. Well, we have with us Brian Seeley, who's instrumental in exposing a criminal underworld that has taken root and spread all over the globe. These criminals had set up shop in every city in the United States and the most major cities on 6 continents and have hidden behind consumer ignorance. Brian Seeley began his quest to expose this system of fraud in the late 2013 and in February of 2014 and demonstrated a flaw on Google Maps that these criminals used to commit these crimes. Well, to prove his point, he wiretapped the Secret Service in Washington, D.C. and the FBI in San Francisco. Yes, he actually intercepted calls to the Secret Service and FBI. From then on, Brian Seeley has been the most sought after international keynote speaker, and his passion to fight for consumer rights, privacy, and educating the public about how to stay safe in constantly changing technology landscape brings him to join this elite program. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure to have Brian Seeley, who will be speaking on the most dangerous cyber attack techniques and how to counter them. With your permission, it's now time to welcome Brian Seeley. Hi, Brian.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Brian.
Yeah, it's quite the conference you guys have put together. Yeah, so that was a pretty good intro. I started off on the computer when I was probably 2 and a half, and my sister was named Lisa after the Mac Lisa. So this is, I've been a dork since, yeah, like 2 or 3. I got seriously more into security. I was probably a CCNA at the time. Yeah, 2012, 2013. And I started noticing, I guess, just things didn't always line up. And I was going back and forth with Google about Google Maps, and it was similar to like Yelp, similar to, yeah, before then Yahoo had like a Yellow Pages type thing. So any of these types of directories that affect consumers. So people would go and search for carpet cleaners, landscapers, pool cleaners, any kind of business that does a service. And there were companies out there that have found a way to kind of game the system. And Google referred to it as spam. They said it wasn't really a big issue. So I made some funny maps listings that they didn't like very much. I changed the Library of Congress to the Zoolander School of Kids Who Can't Read Good. And I changed a concentration camp in North Korea to something. I renamed the Mormon Temple to a comedy club, the Church of Scientology in LA to a comedy club, a bunch of other things. And that really didn't get their attention much either. They just thought it was a nuisance. Fast forward a little bit, I ended up figuring out, okay, if it's not something funny, maybe something serious will get their attention. So I created a duplicate listing for the Secret Service in Washington, D.C., and a duplicate for the FBI in San Francisco because I was watching a movie called The Rock with Nicolas Cage, and they're in San Francisco, and it's this whole thing. And the idea behind it was intercept calls if I could replace the default search locations. And it worked really, really well. And I got maybe 40 calls within the first couple of hours. And I listened to like 2 of them, called a few of my friends, and then I walked into the Secret Service office in Seattle. Feeling like an idiot. Like I had no idea what was going to happen. And I told them everything that I just told you guys. I was able to record some calls. And after about 15 minutes, they told me to leave. They didn't really believe me. So I told them there's 3 agents and me. And I said, okay, just call the DC office of the Secret Service. Just call them right now. And I'll prove it. If I can't prove it, then I'll just leave. So I was hoping the guy would use his phone. He picks up his cell phone and he taps on it a few times and puts it up to his ear, and he calls the guy. And it sounded like he kind of knew the person, like they'd worked together before. So he knew the guy's voice. When he hung up the phone, I got a notification on my phone, and I was able to push play and then put it on speaker. And now I played back his conversation that he just finished in front of the other guys who also, like me, weren't listening to the other guy's voice. And they lost their sense of humor and took all my stuff and kept me in a room for 4 hours and asked me the same questions over and over and over and over again. But because there was no criminal intent, I ended up getting let go. And that was the beginning of finding out, okay, maybe I am a little bit okay at this type of industry. Looking at things with a critical eye, not accepting everything as gospel. When someone tells you, well, this is the way we do it, and this is tradition, and this is, you're just one person, you couldn't possibly be smart. Well, that's not true. And there's an entire industry of people who get paid to think outside the box. Ethical hackers, as you might see. A lot of the ethical hacker types that I've known started off maybe on the unethical or gray hat side. So it just kind of, it's always like a challenge. It's like people want a puzzle. The stuff that's facing us today is finding human mistakes. It's either social engineering and trying to hack people. So you're trying to get people to click on a link and make them make a mistake, or try and find mistakes they've already made by not doing their job. The most dangerous cyber attacks, people are asking, like, what's the secret? And I have the secret right here. There is no secret. It's do the fundamentals. The fundamentals is the stuff that's really, really boring. Automate patches, vulnerability management, backup systems. So if you can't back up every data set, restore, you have a huge problem. If ransomware takes everything out in your building, what are you going to do? Do you have a data center offsite? Do you have somebody with hard drives that rotate? Do you have stuff that's unplugged from the network just in case the worst comes to worse? There's a company recently called Garmin. They make GPS navigation devices. They paid a $10 million ransom, allegedly, according to every major web source. They paid a $10 million ransom because they didn't have backups that were properly configured. So they had no choice unless they wanted to stop being a company. So if you can't dribble a basketball, can you really play in the NBA? I mean, I can't because I suck at basketball. But if you can master some of those fundamentals, then you can get into the more of the advanced stuff. Should you be worrying about finding the most advanced firewall to fix everything? It's not going to fix stupid. It's not going to fix lazy. You have to find some of those core things, the backups, the automation. You have to hire pen testers, people like me, to try to break into your stuff to show you what you need to fix. Because if you've got really, really easy vulnerabilities that are left wide open, that's it. Game over. I mean, every day we're getting attacked, whether it's your home network, whether it's your cell phone, we're all getting scanned. If you're on the internet, everyone can see you. And criminals are getting better at attacking. It's not like it used to be when you used to have like a fort and a wall, and then armies would show up and they'd throw a rock and it didn't work, so they'd throw a bigger rock. It's not that way anymore. All of a sudden, they found a way to teleport the rock. They found a way to get people inside the horse. There's all sorts of different things that they can do now or they can convince you, yes, we have a delivery. Yes, no, it's the King's Pizza. Yeah, he said, let us in. Yes. And then they open the gates and then, oh no. Half the time it's convincing people, or more than half the time, its employees are the biggest weakness. But you can't have a company without employees. So the only real advice I have is training, practicing. Don't click on links, that kind of thing. Hire someone who does professional anti-phishing training. Have that at least every 6 months, if not, and make it part of the onboarding process for every new employee so that they understand, like, this might look like it's from someone you know. This might look like it's from your boss. It might look, and if you're moving too fast to think critically, that's where the executives end up making mistakes. To make you feel better, Someone said it in the panel. Don't shame your employees for making mistakes, because then they're not going to come to you when they actually make a really big one. Create an environment that allows for them to be able to make mistakes, because we all do it. I mean, I don't care if you're a really hard-ass manager. I can find a problem. I can find something you didn't do right. Do you want to be praised for the good stuff and then allowed to learn at the opportunity when you make a mistake? I think that most people would choose that. Backup and automation, hire and outsource pieces of your security that you can't afford to staff experts for. So possibly firewall or possibly security. It all depends on your type of company. Endpoint management, that kind of thing. Then I would recommend whitelisting on top of application whitelisting, which supplements antivirus stuff. Most antivirus will not detect new viruses. Most of the new viruses will change the way that they're wrapped so that you can't detect them. You've never seen this type of signature before. It's like, all right, let it in, it runs, and then you're toast. How do we limit the damage once it gets in? Just for the sake of argument, assume that you're going to get hit. Assume that someone's going to click on a link. I can probably get someone in your company to click on it. Usually it's an executive, because they're too busy to assume that they're being targeted and they just don't pay attention. That's usually what ends up happening. Insider threats are rare. Always assume that every one of your employees can turn on you at any time, even if it's not actually the employee. If the employee downloads something malicious, they then become your enemy, even though it's still Karen sitting at her desk. But she downloaded a coupon printer thinking she was going to save some money. Now, we can talk about a million different things, but if there are any questions that anyone has, this is the time to ask them. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm not going anywhere because my country refuses to follow the rules. And so we're going to be in this stupid pandemic lockdown for a long, long time. No? Nobody has any good questions? All right, I'll tell you another story. There was a company, so Oracle made a really popular product that was an application server that was really, really, really expensive. It was not meant for consumers. They had a patch issue released. Well, 2 years later, a bunch of companies hadn't fixed that patch, which allowed you to take a slash out of a URL, and if you remove the slash, it opens up the admin panel. I know, it sounds really stupid. And you could then read with everything that's in a queue or like a cache on the server, and it's a document cache. Well, one of those companies was a really large bond insurance company. So I called every number that they had listed. They refused to believe that anything was a problem. If they had hired a pen tester, or if they had listened to one of the phone calls and gone and checked, they would have spared themselves looking like idiots in the media. Someone just asked a question. I need details about these cybersecurity techniques of applying DDoS, botnet, ransomware, and man in the middle in any organizations. I don't know that is the best way to word it. DDoS is usually hijacked machines or webcams or any sort of IoT device that you can buy, and most people don't change the username and password, so then they become slaves. So certain types of webcams, that kind of thing. So those people buy them, they don't configure or they don't change the default username and passwords. There's whole websites. You can go and find webcams streaming from all over the world from people who haven't changed their stuff. So change your passwords. That would be the same as a botnet. Preventing ransomware is you want to be able to prevent the execution of software in your environment and its ability to, so if Karen downloads the malicious file, and if she's got application whitelisting, if she's got antivirus, and she has detections in place, and for like Microsoft Active Directory environment, you can limit the spread of it before it gets detected and then infects everybody before the whole world goes to hell. But if you don't have proper security controls in place, limiting Karen's access and everyone's access, if everyone has free access to all of the storage, all your storage is going to be completely taken over. Man in the middle, that stuff's a little bit harder. It depends on the execution. I would look into certificate security. You can, instead of passwords. Anybody else has any other questions? I'm not going anywhere. It's 4 a.m. in Seattle. I have nothing to do.
So, Brian, there are certain questions from the audience. Vinay Sharma asked that, do we need to review cybersecurity separately than information security, or is cybersecurity the ultimate?
Yeah, cybersecurity would be the top. So information security falls under it. Cybersecurity is protecting the information, it's protecting the storage, it's protecting all your infrastructure. It's looking at the whole picture. So take an inventory of what you have and like, okay, what are we trying to protect? Like, you get in a car, you put on a seatbelt because you're trying to protect the humans. Don't let anything bad happen to the people. You're not protecting your sandwich. The sandwich can sit on the dashboard. Look at what's important in your organization. Is it credit card numbers? Is it banking details? Is it private correspondence? Is it trademark stuff? You don't have fire prevention systems in schools yes, to protect the school, but also the humans. So look at what you're needing to protect and then start there. That would be more like data governance and data information security, that you'd want to be able to classify and manage risk, but ultimately you want to protect all of it.
Sure. Also, Brian, there's a question from Abdullah Aziz. He says that if you have only time to do one thing for your organization for cybersecurity, what will it be?
Pray.
If you had only one thing to do.
It's definitely like pray. If you don't have any time to do any of the other stuff, write a letter of resignation. Yeah, one thing for your organization for cybersecurity: hire an expert, hire a third-party security expert to review and audit your entire company's security posture, or pray, one of the two.
Sure. Also, there's one from Dr. Mohammed Karshid. He asked that, I need details about these cybersecurity techniques of applying DOS, DDoS, botnet, ransomware, basically your entire topic, what you have in any organization.
Right? I already covered that, but that question could be like 4 hours.
Okay. Also, Mohammed Al-Shari asked that information security officers are doomed now. I don't know if he's commenting, I believe, on that. Do you have a take on that, Ryan?
Were you not doomed before? I mean, the only time anyone in information security is in the news is when something bad happens. We take on this role trying to do our best to protect everything. And ultimately, you want to make sure you have documentation. You want to make sure that any problem you've addressed in writing, in email to the person saying, no, we're not going to spend money on that. That way you can cover your ass. Because it's a losing money department within any organization. And then at the end of the day, if nothing happens, that's the best day we can have. There's nothing happens, it's all quiet. And then they're thinking, we're wasting money on this person or these people. Why are we spending so much money on this? It's to keep all the fire away. And then when something really bad happens, then it's all our fault, but we never get any of the praise. Money is always a big problem. Yes, it is.
Yes, that's what Mohammed Al-Shari writes. Also, Firas Al-Hilu asked that if we moved everything on cloud, do we still need to invest in cybersecurity? That's one on the Q&A tab.
You can have a Ferrari, but if you don't wear the seatbelts, you'll probably still die if it crashes. So there's certain security. You need to understand cybersecurity. And how are you planning on using everything in the cloud if you don't Like, you have to have a computer. That's not in the cloud. That's sitting right here with you. So you have to be able to have a safe infrastructure for that to be used. And then a majority of it can be in the cloud. That's great. I personally recommend Cloudflare and AWS or Azure. You don't hear Microsoft getting hit with ransomware because they do all the really boring stuff and they have a business process on top of it. What's the future of SIEM?
Yeah, that's dangerous, Satam.
Event and incident management. It's a really good way of being able to identify vulnerabilities and identify events that happen. And it's only as good as how you configure it. So you can miss every single hacking event if you don't have it configured to set you up with alerts. So you need to be able to have, whether you're using Tenable or anything else, Rapid7, you need to be able to configure it. And if you're not an expert and you've never set it up before, you're probably going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. Have you ever built a house? I bet I could YouTube it and just get some wood and a hammer, and then no, your house is going to fall down. So you need to hire somebody who's an expert in doing it to show you what you're going to miss.
Sure,
but yeah, the future is it's going to be around for a while. More data is actually being generated every day, and more devices on the network. We're going to be seeing it. It's an essential part of any medium or large business.
Sure. There are many questions coming in, honestly. So Matthew J. Alex asked that, what's your take on ransomware as a service? Could it be a growing concern for enterprises, SMBs? That's one question.
It has its own acronym now. So probably it's not going anywhere for a little while. Ransomware is the most effective way to generate revenue for any legal organization. Protect your stuff. Do all the basic stuff. If you need more detailed consulting and you use a Windows network, you can find me on LinkedIn and you can hire me and I'll show you where you need to actually implement work. But from the reason I can't just give you all the secrets is because we don't have a webinar long enough and nobody wants to hear me talk that long.
Okay. Also, there's Rohit who's asking that, how does one set themselves on a career path to become an ethical hacker? That's coming in from Rohit.
Study the CEH exam, CISSP, CCNA for networking, because to be an ethical hacker, you have to kind of understand a lot of different components. People end up specializing as they go along, but to get a good base, certified ethical hacker or GPEN for penetration tester, gives you a good fundamental idea of what the tools are and how they are used and what the reports look like. Some of the ethical hacking stuff is really, really boring. It's just boring. But you understand how to look up, find open source tools, be able to scan, gather information, and then what you're going to do when you find, like, what to know with what you found. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do with all this stuff. How do I use this to hack in? It'll teach you all that.
Sure. Also, another extension of what Matthew J. Alex had asked, he says that, what can CTOs and CISOs do to mitigate this growing threat on the ransomware as a service, reaching their cyberspaces? Would you like to comment on that?
Well, don't piss anyone off. For one, you don't want to be a specific target. Train your users not to click on links. Generally, that's how ransomware gets in, is users clicking on something they shouldn't have. So if you become a target because your company makes a certain amount of money or higher, that makes you a prime candidate for a constant, what would be called an advanced persistent threat. People are not going to give up easily if they know you make $100 million a year. They know that there's money available. They'll know you'll pay. They want to do as much damage as possible. So that if they can hack in, great. But they're not going to hack in through the firewall. They're going to try and go in through the employees. And then they'll learn how you guys email, how you guys talk. So they'll figure out, okay, he talks very quickly. He doesn't sign his name. It's always sent from mobile. That's what his signature looks like. They're gathering information to try and impersonate people to get you to send them money. If that doesn't work, ransomware. So how do you mitigate that? Like I said before, application whitelisting, making sure that no applications can run. So if it's a Windows environment, there's App Locker. There's all sorts of, if you have SCCM or you have MDM solution, those all are Intune. Those all have a variety of controls that you can then implement and make sure, or you're through group policy, whatever, to stop ransomwares being able to spread. But if you don't do all that, you're just asking for it. It'll get your whole company before you even have a chance to respond. So proactively go and do all that stuff.
Sure. Also, Brian, Dilip Raj Abdul Razak asked that what is the best thing you can do at this moment when you find that your organization's under attack? What would be the first step that increases the rate of best defense?
Unplug everything. I mean, it depends on what you have. If you have a bunch of servers, take them offline. It depends on what your business is, I guess. Disconnect the internet at your office is a really good start for a lot of people if you're able to do that. You don't want to give them more ability. If you've had ransomware and it's already started to spread, yeah, disconnect backups, disconnect as much as you can, and then hire an incident response firm. But chances are you won't catch it in the middle. If it's a DDoS attack, wait it out. There's not much you can do. You can blacklist IPs. You can set up ACLs to try and prevent IPs from connecting, but they keep changing. If they know that you're actually responding to that kind of thing. If you have a service that doesn't have DDoS protection and you're a website that has, it's mission critical to keep your website up, you should use Cloudflare or anything else. And I don't even get any kickbacks from Cloudflare. So that should be statement enough. It's a good service. One of my friends named Brian Krebs was hit with one of the record-breaking DDoS attacks a few years ago, and it set the record when they were trying to take him down. He was just a journalist. And it was nuts. It ended up taking Twitter and Netflix and a whole bunch of other stuff, well, a bunch of websites offline. And like when they took Netflix down, it's like, all right, now that I've had enough. Now my kids can't watch whatever cartoon they're watching. All right, now I'm paying attention. But there's nothing you can do. So he had to just plan on moving his website over to Google DNS or Cloudflare.
Sure, Brian. Also, Prakash Narayanan asks that, how do you see the evolution of OT threats in the recent years?
OT. Maybe I don't use that acronym enough. What, Prakash?
Maybe I'll ask Prakash, if you don't mind, could you just type us what you're exactly looking at? Meanwhile, we'll move from Prakash to Mohammed Al-Sharji. He says that, what are the best key risk indicators you suggest to monitor and implement with SEAL?
Administrator account logins, bad password logins, failures. If someone tries to log in from the same account in multiple locations, try to use the local administrator account and fails or succeeds on multiple places. Look at the event logs for login failures and login successes. You can get like a Windows event log, a list of all the different types of codes. Domain account, domain admin logins, password changes. Yeah, then it all depends on your equipment. Usually account logins is a really good place to start. And then you can Google for, depending on the make and model of your SIEM, and kind of tailor it from there. Do I think DDoS prevention facilities by service providers are enough? No, I think it's a good start. I don't think operational technology process. Okay. I don't think it's enough, but I think it's a really good start. You can end up getting appliances and net scalers and stuff to do things on your own, but work with Cloudflare or whoever else, and get their recommendations on what's the most current. Because there's a million different recommendations based on what kind of environment you have and what kind of environment or what kind of service you're purchasing. but probably not. No. Operational technology. So,
So
that's a
Prakash,
really big.
yeah.
That's a really big question. The evolution of automation and utilities. Things are becoming easier to automate. And one kid, I mean, the average age of a bad hacker is like 17. Like, how much damage can one guy do? But I guess you can do quite a bit. I mean, I couldn't even get a girl to go out with me when I was 17, let alone take down an entire bank or a global network. I can barely get a girl to talk to me now. So, I mean, maybe I guess I just need to set my goals a little higher. They're automating stuff as often as they can. And every time you put something online, it's scanned probably 15 or 20 times a day by a variety of different companies, by a variety of different people, some good, some bad. And I mean, there's even a guy who breaks into people's routers and changes their username and password to something more secure as sort of like a Robin Hood. Like, it's like, hey, you're not using a good password. I fixed your stuff. Ta-da! And he goes off and does the next thing because he doesn't want that to be used in a botnet to attack somebody else. There's a lot to be desired in everyone's overall idea of what security is and what good practices are. And not everyone has two-factor authentication on. I don't even understand why they would even do that. I get Twitter login attempts every day. People trying to log into my Twitter account. I don't know why. I'm not special.
Sure. So, Brian, there are two more questions which are there, and I won't agree that you're not special. You're absolutely very special. Well, what OS are you currently using, and why exactly that one? That's one of the questions. Okay.
I have a lot of free time on my hands. I'm not allowed to leave. There's nothing to do. I have a laptop with Windows and Linux. I have a laptop with Mac and Windows. I have my computer that I use with all three. And then I have virtual machines on everything from Windows 95 up until now in little virtual machines. Threat hunting technologies are necessities? No, I don't. I don't think until you're quite a large corporation, you don't have time for that crap. Sure would be nice, but unless you're running a research lab on malware, you don't need threat hunting stuff. How do things changes in endpoint security from signature to behavior-based, like CrowdStrike? Heuristic-based scanning. We're going to see some interesting products coming out in the next year or two. Company I work for, Sciemptive, we've got some really cool stuff that we'll be, I guess, marketing. But heuristic-based scanning doesn't really work when the signature keeps changing. Behavior-based, if the malware is adaptive, the behavior-based stuff won't work, or if it doesn't trip certain thresholds, but they do a better job than nothing. Let's put it that way. So you don't want nothing, but you definitely don't want to rely on them and think, oh, my problems are solved, because it's not gonna cut it. Network segmentation, application whitelisting, having even down to network whitelisting. So only everything by default can't talk to anything. And then you have to specifically go and turn on what routes are open or what ACLs are allowing which computers to talk to what. Otherwise, you're just a sitting duck.
Also, there's another question in the Q&A tab, which is, what is your point of view of blockchain and cryptocurrency long term? What are the risks, and do you have any on your thoughts on the subject will be really appreciated, is what the attendee is asking.
Let's see. Well, the U.S. government just announced that they're starting an experimental blockchain, Bitcoin, digital currency. A number of banks are investing in it. I think it's going to be around for quite a while. People there's most of the bigger names are not asset backed, so they're not one-to-one tied with any physical currency or like backed by gold. But then the US dollar isn't exactly gold backed either. And I think long term it's going to be around for a while. I think it's a way to decentralize things, and so that you're not limited to what country you live in, and all of a sudden the politics go to hell, and now your currency is worth nothing. We're having that in Venezuela, having that in Lebanon, and then Lebanon's going through the pandemic right after, and then the horrible explosion. Like, you have these catastrophic events. Blockchain or Bitcoin is immune-ish to that. I think there's a huge need for that kind of thing. I think it definitely caters towards serving the people and, regular people like us, rather than the people who already have power. So I don't think it's going anywhere. And I don't think John McAfee is going to do what he said he was going to do when Bitcoin hits a certain amount in a certain amount of time. He said something very vulgar, but you can go and look it up if you so desire.
So I think, Brian, we've had a lot of questions. I believe Dilip and Shiraj have just put in their questions. As a hacker, how do you see the shift from an on-premises to cloud infrastructure? A piece of cake or threat to a hacker?
Breaking in through a firewall or any of the cloud infrastructure is difficult. It's a lot easier to try and hack people. It doesn't matter what your infrastructure is like if the people are stupid. If your employees are stupid. So if you're spending all this money but you're not training the employees and they aren't learning things or they're not taking it seriously, that's probably your biggest weak point. No one's breaking in through the firewalls except for maybe nation states. They're the ones who are capable and know that it's even possible. That stuff's not advertised on the dark webs. The stuff you see on the dark webs is credit card fraud. Hardly 0 days are worth a lot of money. Let's put it that way. If you come up with a 0 day for an iPhone, oh my goodness, it's like $1 million, $1.5 million. You could retire on that in some countries. So chances are you're not going to stumble upon those types of things, but it's easier to hack people. You can get all sorts of stuff done that way. So yeah, I don't think it makes a difference from a cloud aspect. The problem with cloud then is if it's not configured properly, or if it's not segmented properly, and your company hasn't realized the damage that any one single employee can do if they're compromised, it can actually make things worse.
Sure. Also, Shiraj asked that how would creating digital identity twins and using them with AI bots to manage security work in order to secure an enterprise environment?
I don't even know where to begin to answer that question. If you want, you can email it to me offline. Here, I'm going to write this. I'm going to put my email and contact info.
Sure. So, Brian, there's another question. It says that, what is your opinion on quantum computers making cracking easy? Is that even remotely possible in the near future?
No, not near future. It's possible, but they don't have processors ready for spec yet. I mean, they're not even, you can't buy them. I know that they've got proof of concept ones, and they're working on being able to break encryption, but there's something's going to change in the way that they're being released, because if all of a sudden all encryption that we're using right now is broken, we wouldn't be able to shop online anymore. So they're going to have to mitigate it somehow. But right now it's not impossible, depending on so have a long password phrase instead of a short password, because anything under 11 or 12 digits, that's crackable in a human lifetime. Anything past that gets a little ridiculous. Windows or Linux harder to hack? Usually Windows. If Linux is configured badly and Windows is configured badly, they both suck. Do I think enterprises in the Middle East could shift completely to Linux, BSD, Unix? Yes, I do. But they won't. Well, who knows? Inshallah. Probably because it's easier to stay with Windows and stuff that they know, to be honest. And there might be the availability of custom software developers to create things that would work on Linux to mimic whatever they're doing on Windows is less. And there's the language barrier.
So I'll just prompt to the audience if in case they have any further questions. But meanwhile, we've had a lot of interaction with you, Brian. Thank you for your time. And would you like to say anything on towards the closing of your session? Is there anything you'd like to tell towards the end?
Not in particular. You guys had some really good questions. I look forward to, I think I have a couple sessions, GSEC in Dubai, potentially in the end of October. And I think it's the 26th, 27th, 28th, and I'll be speaking there. So if you get a chance to register and attend, then you could potentially meet me in person. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but whatever. Then Saudi Arabia, I'm speaking at another event in February, I want to say. So, inshallah.
All right. So a lot of them, Mohammed Al-Shari says that he'll be waiting for you in Dubai when you come.
that could be taken so many different ways. But no, I look forward to it. I haven't been to Dubai since 2006, so I know lots changed.
Sure. So I think with this, we wrap. We're so excited to have you. And thank you so much, Brian, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much.